Hey guys, for today's video I'm going to be starting on making my fursuit. Today I am going to be sewing my tail for the box plushy quilted fursuit, whatever you want to call it. So let's go over to the table so I can figure out which fabrics I'm going to use. Okay, so I washed the fabrics that were not washed yet. If you didn't watch part one, I'll link it up in the corner. So we are doing the tail. I decided to reprint them out larger than they were because two things. Because the pattern is originally designed for faux fur, I was worried that if I cut it out at the size that the pattern was originally, that the tail would look kind of weirdly skinny because it wouldn't have that added fluffiness that the faux fur would normally give. So I was originally just going to cut it out with generous seam allowance, and then when I sew against the edge, not sew against the edge, but have the edge of the fabric against the edge of the presser foot like I do, which would make the pieces bigger. But I felt like that would have way too much math involved. Not math, but like I would have to make sure that the seam allowance was not the same, but like to size everything up the same. Because I couldn't just like willy-nilly cut them out. So I decided to print everything out. Again, the only pieces that I will be taping together will be this one and this one. Make them one large piece, like the rest of them are kind of large pieces. And I don't know if I'll do that with the hand paws, just because I did try to size them up on the printer, and the pieces were already so close to the edge that they were getting cut off a lot. Another thing, in the planning video, I talked about how my color scheme was going to be yellow and green with like this beige and brown kind of tan, whatever colors. And I was kind of leaning away having any other colors involved. But then I pulled out these fabrics here, and you can see from the one right on top, it's got blue running through it. And this green has blue as well. There's also this one which has yellow and green, but it also has blue. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna have fabrics that already have blue in them, I might as well, have more fabrics in my selection. I then realized that I didn't have any pink or red for the toe beans and the nose. Luckily, I already had this red fabric pre-washed from before, and I also was lamenting on the fact that there wasn't any like white or light beige. Like this is the lightest color I have in my so this is the lightest color that I have, but I don't love it super much. It's not, I don't like this tone very much. But I was kind of lamenting about the fact that I didn't have any white with any kind of pattern on it. Then I remembered that in the pile of pre-washed fabrics was this one, which you can see has a green and blue polka dot across it, which could be the white for at least the tip of the tail. And since I was already introducing blues into it, and also a little bit of red anyway, that I might as well also include this fabric with a beautiful yellow checker on the back, but it also has the red strawberries. And then this one, again, more blue with green and yellow, and it's already pretty much the same color scheme, with it being mostly yellow and green with accents of red and blue, with the neutrals of white, beige, and brown. So that's where I'm at right now. The first thing I have to do though is cut out my pattern pieces so I can start figuring out some of these some of these squares that are already quartered, I don't know if I'll be able to use some of them for some of the tail pieces. They might be a little big, they might not. Because I also, even though I did make them bigger, I still have to add a seam allowance. A lot of fursuit makers only add a Sharpie's width of seam allowance to their faux fur. But faux fur doesn't fray like woven fabrics do. It's probably some of the cheaper ones, closer to almost like a knit on the back. And then there's others that I don't personally have, but are almost like a faux suede on the back, from what I've seen from videos of people making fursuits. But because I'm using a woven fabric, I'll definitely need some kind of seam allowance to ensure that they don't completely fall apart. Because if I have a really tiny seam allowance on a woven fabric, it will fray and fall apart. I mean, you can already see how much it frayed in the wash with me having not zigzag stitched the edges like I did everything else, because I pre-planned to have all of those washed, whereas this I just washed them quickly. So yeah, I'm going to cut all of these out and then start figuring out what fabrics I want to use for the tail. Okay, it's the next day. I had a little bit of a setback with sewing the pieces together. Machine thread usually is polyester, and at high enough heats, an iron can melt that. And that's exactly what happened. Thankfully, it was only one row of stitches. Unfortunately, I didn't notice it until I was much further along, so that fixing it was a little bit difficult. I had to do a little bit of hand sewing because I couldn't quite reach a section with the machine without making things pucker weirdly. But it is sewn together. Here's one side and the other side. You can kind of see that shape. Now I left a very sizable hole here. I believe the actual instructions says to sew up quite a bit of it from the open end here down with only a small section open to turn and then stuff it. But because I'm going to now be doing embroidery, I want to give myself enough space to get in there, but also have enough of it constructed that I can embroider on all of it if I want to. Next up, I have to deconstruct this sweater to harvest its yarn. So let me just, right, here is all the yarn. I don't need the yellow for this project, so I'm just going to be using these 2 shades of green. And I have a couple of different sizes of embroidery hoops. I don't know which one I'm going to need. I don't really know how well hooping the tail will be. I've never embroidered something that is put together like this, so it's going to be an experiment. So I'm going to start working on that. Oh, I will also be using my largest tapestry needle that I usually use for weaving in ends. It is sharp, not sharp like a small needle is, but it is sharp, so it should be able to push through the fabric and make embroidering easy. We'll see how it goes, and so I'm going to start working on that.
So now there's one more. This
So the embroidery is done. It only took me a couple of hours. I expected it to take several days, but I guess because I'm so used to like embroidery floss being really thin, so my French knots, which is what I use to do the kind of moss texture, are really tiny. Even when I wrap them 3 or 4 times around the needle, it's really tiny. So I guess I'm just so used to it being teeny tiny little French knots, and even if it's like a section this big, it takes me a little bit. But because it was yarn doubled over and I was wrapping it 3 times, it worked out really great. I used an entire small ball of yarn for this, and just the one color. I know I said I was going to use both colors, but I realized halfway through this one that I don't actually know if I want to use both colors. I had always intended to only use this shade of green. The more vibrant green wasn't originally going to be part of this, but we'll see when I get to other parts of this suit. But for now, here is all of the embroidery. Some of it follows the seam lines. I feel like that's maybe not actually based in nature, that they'll follow certain lines of something. I was mostly looking at moss in the woods and it's on rocks, so it's a little more blobby, which I did do. This spot has quite a bit of blobbiness, and then it kind of follows the seam line a little bit. I just wanted them to not just be perfect circles. Not that they would ever be perfect, but if I'm not careful to make it look more organic, it tends to just kind of look like rows of the French knots. But yeah, I've seen some people who've embroidered moss onto things to have it like follow seam lines. So I don't know how based in truth that is, but I like the way it looks. But yeah, so there's a nice big spot right at the almost at the top of the tail here. The next step, I have to turn it back out because the embroidery, which is a little detour of the main instructions for how to make this tail. Now that it's done, I want to zigzag the edges that I have not done yet. So this side and then all the way down to where I had sewed it up before. And then my next step is to finish sewing the seam here, leaving a space. I'll probably go to this section here, leaving me this much space to stuff and then, or turn it out and then stuff it. But before that, I have to make the base of the tail where it'll have straps to attach to a belt. There is a pattern piece for this. Something that I'm unsure about when it comes to this pattern, if I don't touch the sizing at all, for some reason I've noticed that the tail base prints out at a smaller size than the rest of the pieces. I wonder if this is an intentional thing from Spilt Grape Soda that is like part of the PDF that I just don't understand, because I had this whole issue where I went to go print out the cattail pattern and realized that it was different sizes, the tail base. And I'm like, oh, well, I have to like do something to make it be the same. Like it, like everything else prints out at 100%, but this prints out at like 97%. I don't know. But because I sized up every piece for this to 140%, so did this. So this is much larger than the other tail base that I've already used, whereas all the pieces of the tail are only marginally larger. So I think I will not cut this out with seam allowance. I will cut it out exactly at this size to see what happens when it comes to the sizing. I also need to use, I'm not going to use any of the quilting cotton. It needs to, I think it needs to be a thicker, stronger material. On the first one that I made, I used the brown canvas that I've used in previous videos. I think I doubled or tripled the layers, and then I kind of did some stitches, rows of stitches in one way, rows of stitches in the other way, just to kind of reinforce the whole thing before sewing on the nylon strap, which I do have somewhere in my drawers here, which is what the belt will go through eventually. So yeah, let's cut out the tail base pieces.
I'm obsessed. They 100% make it look more crafted and fun around the island. It just looks like you're putting cardboard fleet in Hawaii or something. Something along those lines. Now I have less room for codes than I do for the outline, so I need to make sure that I use the fast fuse stuff, but it will work there, I'm sure. Now, if I can just have a closer picture,
So I was right about it being way too big. I don't know how well you can see the stitches. That's where the tail, the fabric, was stitched on. I'm honestly surprised it's so big. The next step in the tutorial is to take 1 inch or ½ inch thick EVA foam, cut to the size, hot glue it on, turn it out. For the last tail, I used cardboard. I used a couple of layers, glued together with the corrugation going in opposite directions for every piece. I also made the hole much bigger back then. That's how big I made the hole this time, and if I did cut out cardboard, even if it was small, it would never be able to fit through that. So I don't think I'm going to do cardboard on this one, because I did not expect it to turn out so much smaller. I almost wish I had done this whole thing with the original tail base size, because the difference between this and at 100% or 97% or whatever it was about literally about as much as there is between the row of stitches that I just did and here. But, you know, even though I knew that it was much larger, I still went through with it, and I think I'm okay with that. Will this be enough structure? This is 4 layers. That was the first pair of stays I ever made that I had taken the grommet panels out of and the boning out of. So it already was 2 layers with a lot of stitches running through it for the boning channels. I did additional stitches in both directions like I did before, just to really shore them up and make sure that they were together, and then zigzag stitch the edges. I think it's going to be okay. Now, turning it out is going to be a little difficult because I can't get my whole hand in here. But something tells me all this extra fabric maybe will help with the sturdiness. It doesn't want to sit well because of all that extra fabric. You know what I should have done? I should have put relief cuts into it. That's part of the issue. I know it kind of negates all the stitches I did, but I have to do something to help it lay a little bit flatter. That's a little bit better. All right, my next step is to stuff it to my desired density. I do have a lot of polyfill, so we'll see just how much I can fit in here. I think I want it, because there's nothing behind this for support, I definitely want to really pack it back here as much as I can, and then maybe a little less, but still full to give it the nice full tail look. and it's done. It took only a couple of days for me to make. It went by really easily because everything I was using was fabric as opposed to if I was using faux fur. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love the colors. I love the way the embroidery turned out, and it really feels like moss. I am so excited to continue with this project. And I hope you also enjoyed watching me make this. Like I said in the plan video, I've never really done anything like this. I've made a tail and paws once before, and they were both okay. But I'm really excited to continue with this journey of making my first fursuit. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy crochet, sewing, or any other kinds of crafts, please consider a follow. I upload every Sunday, and I hope to see you there. Bye.